invoking the presence and blessings of the divine, respected Professor H.S. Mani sir, dear participants and dear students, welcome to the fourth session of our faculty development program. And I think we are heading pretty well. I hope all of you have got time to practice central divided difference technique that we have discussed yesterday. And are you able to hear me clearly?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So let me present my screen. So today we are going to look at the finite square well potential. So basically yesterday we saw the infinite well potential, right? What we call as particle in 1D box. And when we try to limit the, height of the potential from infinity, that is infinitely strong walls to of finite size, then the entire physics changes, right? So now I think let me again take you through. Actually, I would prefer to write, but then morning already sir has taught it writing. So let me go through a PowerPoint for a change. Okay, so this was something that we prepared for the, person. Okay, so again, I would like to take you through the modeling of this physics problem before I move on to the other aspects. So just to revise, that's what I said, unless until we keep listening to this again and again, it does not sink in. And so first thing is we should always start with the description. So in description, we have three parts: object description, interaction description, and process description. So let us start with object description, in which first you have to describe the object type. So we are again looking at the same microscopic particle, let us say electron. The composition, in this case, it won't be there because electron is a structureless particle, therefore we neglect it. And the variables are basically the mass of the electron, which is very important, okay? And the rest of the two are not very important, at least for the problem that we are considering right now. Okay, then comes the interaction. So we have an attractive potential, let us say, and the interaction agent is it is a finite potential of constant strength and is felt by the particle over a finite region. Okay, so that's one way of drawing that. That is, you basically make it as 0 and then to minus V naught and then again 0. Or other way around is you just shift the axis. Okay, that also we can do. Let us see both ways we can try it. So here the strength of the potential we take it as V naught and the width of the well we take it as A naught. And so these are the interaction variables. The reference system. So because we are in 1D, so simple Cartesian coordinate system with the origin at one end of the box is enough. Or we can also choose the box to be uniformly on both sides. That is, let us say minus A to A, and then at the center we have the origin. So state variables, of course, still remain to be the state function itself. And so this is how you can, a microscopic particle of mass m and energy E is bound by an attractive potential of constant strength V naught over a width W in 1D. So we need to find its wave function psi of x from which all its observable properties can be predicted. So that is exactly the description of the finite square well. But to come up to this description, we have to follow those steps. Otherwise, we always leave out something or other. When we ask the student, okay, how do you really, what do you mean by a finite square well? Okay. Or what do you mean by simple pendulum? They don't come up with the right definitions. That's because, one of these 8 aspects will be missing if they do not focus on individual aspects of the description. So the second stage is formulation, where we try to now put mathematical language into the physical description. So the attractive square well potential can be mathematically represented in this fashion. That is, we have, that's what I did. Now I shifted it upwards. So V of x is equal to V naught for minus infinity to minus W by 2. Yeah, again, I think I have changed the symbol also here. The width I said is A, but now I'm saying it W. Okay. And 0 here between minus W by 2 to plus W by 2 and equal to V naught for W by 2 to infinity. Right, something like this it will look. Yeah, you see here again the width has changed because in each of these I have picked the slides for quickly, so from different places. So in some places we use minus V and some places W. Okay, so please bear with that. But anyway, basically this is the square. This is well known to all of you. That's why I didn't get into the detail. Okay. Now the formulation, second point, first part of the formulation is interaction law. Describe the interaction law mathematically. The second step is try to describe the dynamical law mathematically. So at the microscopic level, we know that time-dependent Schrodinger equation is what consists of the dynamics of the particle. And one can use this kind of a separation of variables to obtain this time-independent Schrodinger equation. And this is our aim, right? Our aim in this workshop is to solve this for various potentials. Like yesterday we did infinite well potential. Today we are doing finite square well. Tomorrow we'll be doing harmonic oscillator. Day after tomorrow we'll be doing Morse potential. And then after that we are doing Woods action potential. But fundamentally we are solving this equation. Right. So boundary conditions is the third part. And so the wave function psi of x and its derivative need to be continuous at x equal to minus w2 and plus w by 2. And further, it must satisfy the normalization condition. So that is integral minus 1 plus 1 psi star psi should be equal to 1. That means, actually, physically, what does it mean? It implies psi of x should tend to 0 very rapidly as x tends to plus or minus infinity. So otherwise, this won't be square integrable and you will not get a fixed finite value here. Okay. So this is what physically should happen. Psi of x should die down to 0 very quickly. And then comes the third stage in modeling the physics problem, that is ramification stage. So here we have, as I said, two aspects. Either you can solve it analytically or numerically. So today we are going to look at first the analytical solution, because I feel that there is something that some of us do which is not very common in all the colleges. And I did find it to be true when I gave this lecture to person also. So I thought it will be useful. And then the numerical solution of the time-independent Schrodinger equation for finite square well, the next speaker, Dr. Sunil, will be doing for you. Okay, Sunil Bansalji. So to obtain the bound state solutions, we have for the case E less than V naught. See, in the whole thing can be divided into three regions, right? This is the region 1. So here, if you are looking at bound states, there are two types of problems that you can try, right? One is E less than V naught and one is E greater than V naught. So E less than V naught is called the bound state solution and E greater than V naught is called the scattering state. Okay. So now E less than V naught is what we are interested. So there are three regions in which you have to solve the Schrodinger equation. This is well known to you. Okay. So in regions 1 and 3, V of x is equal to V naught. So you substitute V naught, you get 2m by h cross square times V naught minus E. So what I did was actually it is E minus V naught. So I took a minus sign out. So you get V naught minus E so that this remains positive. And K1 square will be 2m by h cross square times V naught minus E. So you will have, the homogeneous equation. So m squared or some m1 squared minus K1 squared equal to 0. So you get this, right? All of us know this. Now here, depending on the boundary conditions, you have to decide on the values of C1 and C2. So this is very well known. As x tends to minus infinity, this will turn to infinity, and minus infinity, this will go to 0. So this will go to 0, whereas this is going to increase to infinity. So you have to force C2 to 0. So the solution will be C1 exponential K1x. And as similarly, with a similar reasoning, we can show that psi3 will be equal to C2 times exponential minus K1x. So these are very well known to us. And region 2, V of x is 0. So it is simply the same thing as particle in 1D box before that we have solved. So K2 squared is 2me by h cross squared, and psi2 can be written as d1 sin K2, K2x plus d2 cos K2x. So till here, I think everybody knows the physics that we are discussing. And here comes the symmetry conditions, which is generally not done. This is what I found. You can look at the book by Quantum Mechanics by Amit Goswami for this. Very beautiful description he gives. And so if the potential is symmetric, that is V of minus x is equal to V of x, then the wave functions would be either even or odd, but not a combination of both. This is because actually whenever the potential is symmetric, it actually commutes with the Hamiltonian operator. And the Hamiltonian commutes with the parity operator. So parity operator, you see, it will have only plus or minus 1 as the eigenvalues, and the wave functions will be either even or odd. So if the parity operator commutes with Hamiltonian, and that will commute with Hamiltonian only if the potential is symmetric, in that case what happens is the two operators should have simultaneous eigenvalues. So this is a point which should be introduced to the students before we do the finite square well. And then what happens is the solution in region 2 will simply be either odd or even, but it cannot be a combination of both. And this makes the entire mathematics, the derivation that runs for almost 40 minutes in the class to just only 2 steps. Okay. So this is something that I wanted to actually emphasize upon. That's why I took up this analytical part. Okay. So the boundary conditions on the wave function at the low boundaries of the well are basically psi1 at x equal to minus w2 should be equal to psi2 at x equal to minus w by 2. Psi3 will be on the other side. So it will be at x equal to plus w by 2 should be equal to psi2 at x equal to w by 2. And similarly, we should also have conditions on the derivative, first derivative. We all understand, right? Psi and d psi by dx should be continuous, and otherwise you will not have the existence of d squared psi by dx squared. That means Time-Independent Schrodinger equation will not exist. So it is the Time-Independent Schrodinger equation which gives you this continuity conditions on psi and psi dash. Now we can club these two conditions by posing a condition like this, that is d by dx of logarithm of the psi1 should be equal to d by dx of logarithm of psi2. So you see what we are doing is, when you take this, you get 1 by psi1 into d psi1 by dx should be equal to 1 by psi2 into d psi2 by dx. So this is like as if we are combining the two conditions. So you are having psi1 and you are having this also to be continuous. What we are saying is 1 by psi1 into this d psi1 dx should be equal to 1 by psi2 into d psi2 by dx. So that should happen at x equal to minus w by 2. And similarly, you will also have an equation for psi2 and psi3 at x equal to plus w by 2, right? So this is what makes the entire thing very, very simplified. Maybe I think I should at this point try to go back so that you can see exactly what is happening here. Okay, so I hope all of you are in tune with me till here. And what happened to my yeah, so I got back my where is the okay, I think the pad was opposite and somebody was trying to join the session, I think. Let me just allow them. This is one problem actually. That's why I make my students do this. Okay, right. Okay, so what we are having is, so this is what, let me just show you the plot. The plot we are having is basically, this is your x and this is your v of x. Let me choose a different color. So from infinity up to minus w by 2, it is v naught, and then it goes like this. Right, so this is your minus w by 2 and this is your plus w by 2, and this value here is v naught. This is our origin. Okay, so now we should have this psi1 here, this is psi2 here, and this is psi3 here. So what we did was, we said that psi2 cannot be a combination of both even and odd functions. So it should be either I think we chose d1 times sine k2x or d2 times cos k2x, but it cannot be a linear combination of both. These are called the odd solutions and these are your even solutions. Okay, so psi1 of x was c1 times exponential k1x, and similarly psi3 of x was c2 exponential minus k1x. So here we defined our k1 as square root of 2 I think what was it? I think K1 was what was K1 for us? Yeah, 2m by h cross squared times v naught minus c. And K2 was square root of 2m e by h cross. Okay, so this is a very quick revision. Now the point that we want to make is 1 by psi1. So let me take the odd solutions. Let me take the odd solutions. So 1 by psi1. So 1 by c1 exponential k1x into differentiation of psi1. That is c1 times k1 into exponential k1x. at x equal to minus w by 2 should be equal to 1 by psi 2. So here we are taking odd solutions. So 1 by d sine k2x times differentiation of d1 sine k2x will give you d1 k2 cos k2x at x equal to minus w by 2. Okay. So you see here it becomes so easy to solve for that equation. So this goes away. This gets cut. So you have only k1 on this side, and on this side the d1 gets cancelled, and you get equal to k2 times cot of k2x. So x equal to minus w by 2. So because sine function is there, so you get a minus sign. So similarly, so this is one equation we got, and the other equation is for the even solutions. Okay. So for the even solutions, what you will get, you will have on this side again k1 only, but on this side we will get 1 by d2 cos k2x into differentiation of that will give you minus d2 k2 times sine k2x at x equal to minus w by 2. So d2 goes away, and what you are left with is basically tan, but again sine is an odd function, cos is an even function, so you get overall minus sign. So you'll get k1 equal to plus k2 times tan k2 w by 2. So you can see how easily we got this, right? Otherwise we spend a lot of time in the class if we don't use this fact that the Hamilton operator commutes with the parity operator. So I want you to refer to this book, Quantum Mechanics by Amit Goswami. It's a very good book. One of my favorite books for quantum mechanics is by Michael Morrison. If any of you want a personal copy, you can ask me. I will send it to you by email. Okay. So there are a lot of good books, of course, no doubt. Some of them obviously you like because you like the. After this, what most of the teachers do is they draw the cot function, and then they substitute this, and then sine that they will draw the tan function, and they say you know what I mean, right? So we tend to draw these curves like that, okay, and this will go like that, and all this we know, this jugglery, and then nobody does anything actually. They simply copy from the book, and right. So this is the basic problem, right? You simply copy the whole thing on the board, and then we don't even know how to obtain these things, right? And so it's a very simple. So even though it's an analytical solution, we say, but it cannot be solved analytically because it's a transcendental function. So we need to go for a numerical method. Okay. So here we either move towards what is called as bisection method, or maybe you can go for a Newton-Raphson method. And if you actually tried it, you will know the difficulty, because neither the tan function nor the cot function is not very easy to plot, whether it is in Scilab or it is in because you see basically it goes to infinity at all these pi by 2s or n pi by 2, all the fact. So that's a big problem, right? So that's why actually I feel that nobody even tries to plot all this through the thing. So that's not a very good way of solving it. The way to solve it, okay, let me just take this second one for example. The way to solve it is you have to write it in this fashion. See, now k1 is basically your k1 is square root of k1 is 2me by h cross squared, right? 2me by h cross squared, and k2 is 2m v0 minus e by h cross squared times tan of again k2. K2 is, I think we did a mistake. We wrote K1 is square root of 2m by h cross square times v0 minus e. Yeah. What happened to all my? I have actually very good set of people in my person, those who constantly actually keep telling, sir, this is wrong, that is wrong. Nobody is talking anything today. 2me by h cross squared times tan of square root of 2me by h cross squared into w by 2. So this is the function, but it will be more easier if we write this function. So basically, actually what we do is we write this as f of e is equal to this minus this, so equal to 0. So we get the roots of the function. And as I told you, tan is very difficult to plot. So an ideal way of doing it would be to write this tan as sine by cos. So then it becomes an easy function to plot without any problems. So you'll also get a cos function here. So that is the thing. Okay. So this is the equation we want to solve. Now in this equation, when we want to solve, we have to remember we are using atomic units. So mass of the electron equal to 1 and h cross equal to 1. So this simplifies. F of E will be equal to square root of 2 times V naught minus E into cos of now root 2E into W by 2 minus root 2E times sine of root 2E into W by 2 equal to 0. So this is the equation we want to solve. Okay. So all of you are with me till here, and I hope I did not go too fast and you are able to follow whatever I said. Okay. So so this is what I was showing, right? So this is one equation like this, and this is another equation that you will get. So this is the kind of equation that we want to solve. Okay, right. Now let me go to GNumeric and show you how to solve this equation. Are you all with me till here? Any questions? Hello?
Yes, sir, it's fine.
We are following, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. See, actually, one-sided happens now. Sometimes I get doubt whether am I, doing things correctly. So once in a while, just I love Professor H.S. Mani for that. He used to always say, Shastri, I want to keep saying the same thing even if I understand, so that you will know that I am with you, and that's very important. Okay. So now you see here, we want to implement, let us say, using bisection method. Okay, I hope all of you know bisection method. Do you know bisection method, or should I just give a small introduction? Bisection method. See, bisection method basically what it does is it bisects the interval. So for bisection method, first thing what we need to do is we have to identify the two places where the function cuts the. So whatever, let us say we have some function which is, so these are the roots that we want to determine. So to determine the root, first you have to bracket the root. So this is your function f of e versus e, and so we should find out two values e1 and e2 such that the actual root, which we call it as er, lies within the interval. Okay, and so how do I know whether the values of e1 and e2 are such that er lies? So for that, what we do is we notice that the function's value at e1 is greater than 0 and the function's value at e2 is less than 0. So that then only this will, that means it has crossed. Or it can be otherwise. This can be e1 and this can be e2 if you are having this one like this, right? So in this case, function's value is negative at e1 and it is positive at the e2. Okay. So basically the condition is f of e1 into f of e2 should be less than 0. If this happens, then we are sure that the root lies within the interval. Okay. Root belongs to the interval e1, e2. Okay. Now once we know this, then we can calculate the root. The way so bisection basically does, it just simply takes the average of the two. Okay, it bisects the interval. So the root is given by e1 plus e2 by 2. Now you get er. Now you have to determine, let us say the er is come out to be somewhere here. Okay, when you take the average. Now you have to determine whether you have to shift e1 to er or you have to shift e2 to er. So again the condition is you check whether f of e1 into f of er is less than 0. If this is less than 0, then we know that the root lies between e1 and er. So e1 won't change. e1 is unchanged. If this is greater than 0, then e1 should become equal to er. Because if this is greater than 0, that means it still remains on the left of the er. Okay. So e1 should be shifted to closer to er. Same way you also check f of E2 into f of ER. If this is less than 0, then E2 is remaining unchanged. And if this is greater than 0, that is if the condition fails, then we have to shift E2 to ER. That is, E2 will check the value of ER. Okay. So this is what we have to repeat. This is what we have to repeat till we attain the accuracy that we want. Okay. So now let me move to G numeric. So in bisection method, the first step that you have to do is you have to plot the function, because from that function plot only we will come to know what are the values of E1 and E2. Okay. So energy values, you see the function is here. This is the function we want to solve. So energy cannot cross V0. Okay, energy values, maximum value will be V0. So it starts at 0. And okay, now first we have to decide on the, that's why I always go in a systematic fashion. It's not correct. So first thing that we have to do is remember our entire process, right? Object variables. Object variables are ME equal to 1. And of course, in this case, H bar equal to 1. So that is atomic units. So we know we are in units of Bohr and Hartree. Okay, I'm not writing that. And then interaction variables. Interaction variables are V0. So let us choose V0 equal to how many units we want. I think I have the answers for 14 electron volts or something like that. Okay, no problem. Let us choose some 10. Okay, some value we'll choose. And W width of the well to be, let us choose, give some value please. Okay, 4 units. And so those are the interaction variables, and that's it. There is no step size involved here because the algorithm I already shown you, it only has ER. So now next thing is the potential. So E and F of E. Okay, so we can we can, if you want, we can calculate K1 and K2 and keep them here. But then, of course, we cannot do that without the values of E. So I will not. So 0, and we want to go up to 10. So let's go in steps of 1, 2, 8, 9, 10. Okay. So here, I just want to, yeah, I hope all of you are able to see my screen. Now we have to give the formula. The formula is here, square root of 2 minus, so square root function is there, 2 star, bracket open, V0. V0 is B9, so we put $1 there and another $1 because that value doesn't change as we move. V0 minus E, E is here, right? V0 minus E, bracket, one bracket close, another bracket close, and multiplied by cos of, again, square root of 2 star E. Okay, that square root bracket completes there, into W. W is this, so you put the dollars on the W, so that value doesn't change. The referencing should be correct. That is divided by 2. That completes it. Okay, so that is the first part of the function. The second part of the function has a minus sign. So what I can do is I can just copy this so that I don't need to type the whole thing again. Control C minus Control V. Now square root of 2 star E. So I should remove this, and that is A14. Okay, and cos of this, correct? Cos value is same. So square root of 2E into sine of square root of 2E into W by 2. So I hope we are right. I hope everybody is with me. I have given the formula correctly.
No, I think there should be sign there.
Sign.
There should be sign.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, right. So now we can pull this function, and if you see, you can give 11 also, and then it will say wrong because square root of negative number won't be there, right? Okay. So if you do that kind of mistake, then something will happen and you should know what is the reason for it. Okay. So there you go. And there it is. Let me insert that. So you can see that it is cutting the 0 at 1, 2, 3 points. Okay. And how can you can also make out from the values here itself, right? Between 0 and 1 there is 1, and between 2 and 3 there is 1, and between 6 and 7 there is 1. Okay, right. So now we are ready to implement to get a better accuracy, right? Because see, now you can actually put your thing here, but that will all be only approximations, right? You can see the value there, it's almost going to 0. The function value is 0.03. So I can slightly vary on that and then see where it is actually going to 0. Okay, but that's not very difficult thing to do. Now we go for bisection method. Okay. Okay. So bisection method, I will keep my iteration number also so that I'll know how many iterations it took. And now I will give E1, I will give E2, and then I will calculate ER. Then after that I have to calculate F of E1, because I need those, right? I need F of E2 and I need F of ER. Okay, all these things we need. So iteration number 1, E1 will be, let us say 0. So E1 is 0 and E2 is 1, because that's between these two only we have the value, right? So ER will be equal to formula E1 plus E2 divided by 2. Okay, and that is correct. Now for the function here, what we can do is we can copy this value, Control C, and then go here and Control V. Okay, now when you do this Control C and Control V, this A14 will have to change, right? The A14 will become now equal to this B28. Okay, B28. Yeah, I picked up correctly. Okay, and so A14 again remains, B10 remains, and square root of, yeah, here A14 should go to B28. I think one more A14 was there which we left out. We'll go and change it. This will become B28. I think there's one A14 here. That will also change to B28. Okay, and you can check whether you got the same answer or not, because it should be same. Now the other two can be just simply pulled, right? You drag it, you get the remaining two answers, because E2 is here and ER is here. Okay, and when you click on this, you will see it is taking E2. Okay, and when you click on this, it should take ER. It's taking ER. Okay, so there we are. The first step is over. In the second iteration, we have to use that condition. So you put if condition. If f of E1 star f of ER is less than 0, then E1 will not change. So E1 will remain as E1 itself. Else it will become ER. Did you all get this condition?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. And similarly here we will give a if condition. If f of E2 star f of ER is less than 0, then E2 won't change. So it will be taking the same value. Else, if the condition fails, it becomes ER. So that's what we wrote here in the bisection method. If this is less than 0, E1 is unchanged. If this is greater than 0, else, that means greater than 0 means else E1 will become equal to ER. Okay. So that's what I implemented. And now these rest of the things have to be just dragged. Okay. Now we are ready, because we have the entire thing with us. So this is what is the final condition, and this has to be repeated. Okay, and format row height autofit. Yeah. So you can see here that whenever f of ER goes to 0, that's where our answer is. Okay, but then you can figure out here that it's going to 0 even in the second iteration. So what we have to do is we have to format cells and say I want how many decimal places. Let us say I want a decimal place accuracy of maybe 5-6 decimals, right? Apply, say okay. 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 So this is already pretty good. See, this is what happens in bisection method. It sometimes we can go very, very close to the answer and then again go away from it. Okay. That's why the convergence is linear and it takes more time. So in this case, actually, if we are interested only in 2 decimal accuracy, we already got the answer in the second iteration. Now the advantage is we got okay, so that means this is the ER That means ER is one of the ERs might be 0.25 itself, you can say. Or of course, yeah, you can, if you can see here, 3 decimal accuracy. So it is again 0.004. Yeah, this is I think more accurate, 0.249. Okay, so 0.25 if you want 2 decimal accuracy. If you want 3 decimal accuracy, then 0.249 after the end of how many iterations. So you have more number of iterations like that. Okay, now comes the so this is one value we got, the bound states. So we got E1 to be equal to 0.249. Okay, now what is E2? For getting E2, what you have to do is you have to change E1 and E2, and it is between 2 and 3. So this becomes 2 here and this becomes 3 here. That's all. So you got the answer, and you can see here, this is the answer, 2.227. Okay, so 2.227, and E3 will be, and remember that this is only one part of the solution. Okay, E3 will be between 6 and 7. So you make this 6 and you make this 7, and so 0.005, 6.058. Okay, 6.05. So these are the 3 values. Okay,